Miami Hurricanes season came to an end with a 9-6 loss to Troy here at the Gainesville Regional. And it's not just disappointing because of the opponent that they lost to end their season, or that they at least couldn't force themselves into the game behind me here with another opportunity to play Florida. It's also disappointing because they're here in Gainesville playing a regional here. Look, after last season when Miami won a regional at Hattiesburg, goes to Game 3 in the Super Regionals, with what they had coming back, in addition to the transfers that they added to the roster and some key freshmen, the goal for this year's team was to host a regional, be one of those top 16 teams, and they really never threatened to do that all year long. And look, also when I talked about the ACC, when the season ended there, Miami never really threatened to win the ACC either. And those same top 3 teams, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and Florida State, were the same top 3s from last year. So although Miami did increase itself in the standings and they did have a better regular season, they just never, all season long, proved themselves to be one of those top teams, one of those teams, the top 16, or threatened for an ACC title, or even obviously now threatened to be in Omaha as a College World Series team. Look, they go 0-3 against Florida. The losses against Florida just continue to pile up. You lose a series at Florida State. Your 2 rivals, you're in year 3, and again, you didn't have to face North Carolina. You didn't have to face Georgia Tech until the ACC tournament, and you lost handily to the Yellow Jackets, who are very good. But that's kind of what sums up this season to me, is just they just weren't good enough against the good teams. They didn't have enough quality wins. And when asking the question, was this season a success for the Hurricanes, it's hard for me to say that it was. Now, was it completely a disaster? Obviously not. But again, when you're talking about steps within a program, going into year 3, needing to really elevate the program, and the disappointing end, 1-2 here at the regional, and blown out by Florida, just non-competitive in that game, the way it panned out, and losing the way they did, and the pitching, then the defense, which I'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, it's hard to say that this season was a success, even though, again, they did make some improvements from last year's regular season. They did win 39 games, but where this program wants to go, and again, being back to the College World Series, haven't been there since 2016, and really, going 1-2, not winning this game, they weren't close. They weren't close, and that's disappointing. And look, there's a lot of factors of why they weren't able to have a better season. And pitching and defense, as I mentioned earlier, caught up with them in this regional. They couldn't pitch themselves into enough wins at the regional. Today's game, they're up 6-2 in the 5th. They get it going with some runs. And, you bring A.J. Siskar back into the game, and I felt like at that time it was his the rest of the way to give this team a chance to win the regional. Essentially, he needed to finish it off, and kind of save the bullpen a little bit for tonight, and if they could get to tonight, and then Monday enforce that. AJ was not able to do it, again, shaky, and then it gets tied at 6-6, and at that point you're going through the relievers, and they just couldn't hold the lead. And then Jake Dorn giving up back-to-back home runs to the 8 and 9 hitter, when the game was tied at 6 there in the 7th inning, and they scored another run. So, and Miami didn't score the last 4 innings of the game. Speaking of home runs, I'm right here on the left field line. Hopefully a ball doesn't come this way. I will not be ready for it. And after the game, I was able to ask questions to Coach Arteaga. I asked him about moving forward, because again, it's tough to really just hammer in on this game in particular, because there were so many issues with this team, and basically, how do you correct some of these things? What do you got? The pitching was an issue, and defensively, one thing I didn't ask, and you could watch the press conference, and certainly there's different questions I could have asked. One of them, as the game was over and doing some thinking, defensively, one of the things that I could ask that I didn't was, it needs to improve, but I wonder if they're going to take a different look on evaluating of players, and not just get a guy that can swing the bat, maybe a little bit, even if there's a little bit of give and take, maybe they do a little bit more evaluation or put more of an emphasis on better defensive players. Coach talked about the transition with Jake Ogden going to second, and really, look, Ogden at second, Shahan obviously had his issues, not just in this regional, but all season long there at shortstop. And Cuvée wasn't great when he was in there at third base, and Milano really struggled at third base, and he actually DH'd today. So, there are issues. I thought Alvarez as a bright spot at catcher, that's certainly a great spot moving forward if they could build around him. But Coach Arteaga talked a little bit about the future. He said they're basically just going to get back and kind of look at things. He didn't really take the opportunity to answer questions of what everybody wants is for this team to get better. And I think one of the things I should have mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why this season doesn't feel like a success or that it does feel disappointing is because a lot of their guys are going to be gone. A lot of their key guys are going to be gone, particularly in the lineup. But Rob Evans as well, on the pitching side of it, had a good season, a breakout season for them. But hitting side, your best hitters, your core guys, your Derek Williams, then Ogden moves on, Galvin. Souza's going to be a draftable guy, Cuvée as well. So your top guys, and that's what it felt like. It felt like a build up to year 3, and they fell short. The Cuvée entry obviously certainly derailed them. That would have given them a better bat, solidified the infield a little bit better, but again, he's not a plus defender at this time. So certainly in general, there's just a lot of improvements that need to be made, and the defensive miscues and misplays, they were hard to watch all year long. The pitching. Now look, you're going to give up runs, and Miami was middle of the pack in the ACC in runs allowed and runs scored, 7th and 9th respectively. Actually 7th in runs scored there. This was in conference play statistics. So both of those areas need to be better, and again, you got to be in that top 5, kind of get yourself elevated. And I don't know where they go from here in terms of they've got to get good players in the transfer portal, kind of hope that these freshmen really develop, and we'll see. And I know there's a lot of a lot of complaints, a lot of criticism, a lot of frustration with Arteaga as head coach wrapping up year 3. Is it enough wins? As I mentioned, yeah, they did make an improvement, but coach did say recently that he understands Miami standards, of course, as good as anyone, and he said, it's disappointing, not getting to Omaha, and they didn't. Year 3 of this, and they haven't been back to Omaha since 2016. So I understand the frustration. I don't know where they go from here in terms of if they're going to stick with Arteaga, some changes that need to be made with the roster, getting better players in. I do think that certainly would help. I think we'll see how things go though. But I definitely understand that the frustrations, again, losing here in Gainesville. Miami's lost 9 straight games to Florida in NCAA tournament games. I touched on the Florida State. They're having trouble winning series, winning big games against key opponents. And to me, that has to change, regardless of who the coach is. That needs to change. Miami, they want to be in that national picture, want to be considered one of the best programs in the country, be ranked as an example as well. They were ranked early on in the year at top 25, but the Florida series going 0-2 against them early on put them out of it and never really contended to be a top 25 team. And I think at a minimum, you want to be considered that. You want to be fighting for a regional host spot. That certainly gives yourself the best opportunity to win, as you'll see around the rest of the country. So they've got room to grow. They've got to get better. The players that are going to return to this program have to take a step up, and I do want to kind of leave with this, but there was a somber attitude on the bus I heard coming in, from the players. It was a quiet group, and it's interesting when you hear that because you don't know what that means. Does it mean they're focused on trying to win this game? Are they extremely disappointed still from last night? Because typically on the bus ride over to the game, there's music on the bus, or they're kind of a little bit more lively there, but and that's kind of the team they are. There was a little bit of rally stuff, but it's kind of a calm team personality-wise for the most part, I would say. So just in general, and it's tough with baseball because you do definitely have to have patience and can't get too into everything with results as a hitter or a pitcher, but definitely in general, leadership, guys stepping up, really taking ownership and a real sense of urgency. And I think that's what fans want to see with any program, regardless of baseball, basketball, football, whatever it might be. And I think that's an area where they can improve, to really understand the importance of winning and getting to a high mark and competing for things. That's something that was disappointing, not playing well enough against quality opponents, not putting yourself in position to compete for the things that you want to compete for. As I mentioned, ACC title, regional host, and now winning a regional. They weren't competitive nearly enough as they needed to be to try to come out of this regional. And, last thing, looking back at last night, when I did my reaction video, it wasn't overly harsh because, they still had a game to play or a day to play. So we'll see. But certainly, looking back again, extremely disappointing with how they performed in that game. Guys have to, if you go on the mound, you've got to get guys out. You can't be walking batters, and I think the walks just really piled up on this team. Way too many walks. It's one of the team that has walked the most, issuing walks in recent years. So that certainly was disappointing. Again, the miscues defensively led to a bunch of unearned runs, and again, against Florida, it's a team that you wanted to face. I heard some guys say they were looking forward to it, but 0-3 against the Gators this season. As I mentioned, 9 straight NCAA. Miami has not beat Florida in a tournament game since 2004, so that's obviously a long time. And Florida's not just having success against Miami, they've had more success as a program in general. So we'll see where this program goes from here, but extremely disappointing ending to the season, in a season that just wasn't good enough all year long. And I think the thing is, when you're optimistic about the year, you're at least for me, I was thinking about last year so much. They made a run last year, so let's see if they can do it again, and they did not. So I think all the criticism that they've been getting, I understand it, I get it, and I think some of it is fair. So again, we'll see what this program does moving forward to have more successful seasons. Drop in the comments below. There's a lot to talk about. I think that's what's disappointing. It's not just one area with this team, with this program. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Where can they get better? Are there positives that you did see? For me, off the top, if I say one positive, Alonso Alvarez is really exciting to watch, really excited to see what he does moving forward as a switch hitting catcher, who I thought got better as the year gone on and went on. So looking forward to seeing how he kind of progresses as potentially one of these next really good hitters, really good players out of Miami. But thanks for watching this video. I'm out of here much earlier than the last 2 nights. It has been a couple long days here at the ballpark, but I was glad to be up here. Got to drop this phone here. I'm going to get going. Thanks for watching. Have a good rest of the day.